Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a terrible nosy neighbor slaps me and wants me arrested thinking I am a homeless burglar. She claims that someone like me cannot own a $1 million mansion. Let me tell you, looks can be deceiving. And the first one starts like this. All my life I've never had it easy, always fighting tooth and nail to achieve my goals. But in the end, even after I've succeeded at life, there are plenty of people wanting me to fail. In this case, it was one particularly rude and bossy Karen who stuck her nose into my business for the first and last time. But to get to the meat of the matter, we have to first jump back a few months. So it was at the end of March when my life took a huge turn for the better. As we were coming to the end of a busy financial year, I heard from an inside source in a major tech firm that they were getting ready to release something big, prompting me to buy as much stock in their company as I could afford. True enough, their new release had the public in a frenzy and their revenue exploded, leaving the shareholders, myself included, sitting pretty on a nice profit. With this money, I was able to move out of the shabby apartment I called home into the first mansion I saw. It was in a great neighborhood on the edge of the city. It looked as luxurious as Hollywood Heights. As the realtor showed me around, I saw a few neighbors who each smiled and waved back at me. A real sense of community I felt I was missing out on before. After settling on a price, the rest of the legal proceedings went by smoothly. Although at this point my work was also getting busier, so I ended up having to hire a moving company to handle the whole operation. I would have liked to have a little more control over the situation, but working from dawn to dusk left me with little energy or choice in the matter. I wondered what kind of impression that left on my new neighbors. Would I hear rumors circulating that I was too important or stuck up to move my own boxes, or wild fabrications about my possible vampirism? I chuckled at the possibilities. It was on the night of the last moving day when I finally found time to drive over to my new place to check it out. It should not have been a surprise, but the streets actually looked quite different in the dark, and despite my car's navigation, I ended up driving back and forth a few times before I gave up and parked on the curbside. One highlight of the mansion was the entrances, a gated entrance for pedestrians and a smaller road for cars at the back of the property. I had, however, forgotten to check that second entrance when I first bought the place. 10 minutes later, I found myself at the gates with yet another problem. The realtor had failed to give me the new code to open the gate, and I doubted they would return my call at 9 p.m. Frustrated, exhausted, I stopped to calm down when I saw an idea. Dragging the garden waste wheelie bin closer to the wall, I hauled myself up and deftly scaled the wall, falling into my front yard with a hint of tactical grace. It was a strange feeling to break into your own home. It was not until I was crossing the grass that I thought how it would look if a neighbor spotted me now, a man of shrouded features sneaking into a wealthy estate. I didn't have to wonder for how long though. As I was fumbling with the keys to open the front door, I heard a sharp whisper from nearby. I stopped for a moment but carried on until I heard it again, louder this time. A woman stood at my gates, a flashlight in one hand and a wooden bed in the other. Karen seemed to be trying to get my attention, though I was not in the mood to be harassed by some crazy lady with a weapon. I gave a friendly wave before opening the door, stepping inside and firmly locking it behind me. Peeking out from the nearby windows, I watched until the lady retreated back into the shadows and I assumed I had dodged a bullet. I sighed with relief as I began to move from room to room, inspecting the handiwork of the movers and interior decorators. Just as I was getting comfortable after a stressful evening, a series of loud noises outside alerted me to danger. At the same time, I heard a beeping noise from the front door, which I mistook for the doorbell, creeping down slowly, hoping that the lady had not also climbed over the fence to get to me. Instead, I found a small screen on the wall beeping, which when pressed showed me video footage of the gated entrance. Another thing I completely blanked since I was last here. It was at this point I realized this was no stranger at all. It was one of my neighbors, though she still looked like a crazy Karen, bat in hand. I was about to go out and shoo her off when I saw a car pull up next to her, two uniformed officers stepping out. I cursed under my breath as I pushed the lock to open the gates for them, Karen following them in despite being told to stay put. I opened the door and waited as they approached, all the while Karen was talking their ears off, but I couldn't make out much other than a few curse words and bad remarks. The officers explained that they'd been called to investigate a disturbance on the property from a concerned citizen, the not-so-secretive source staring wide-eyed and angrily at me from behind them. Before I could even begin to defend myself, the woman pushed herself to the front and jabbed me with her finger, launching into her own speech with her own version of events. To her credit, most of her story was true, though with her own malicious embellishments. Still talking, Karen demanded to search the house to make sure that I hadn't stolen anything. As she took a big step towards me, the cops and I shared a frown at her attitude, though they were now more acting like spectators to the drama than active participants. When she failed to get her own way, she turned to the men and strongly suggested that they needed to look around as well, which prompted them back into action. Now here's the thing, I don't have a problem with the police, but that did not mean that I wanted them or my nasty neighbor poking around in my things when there was no telling what she would find or do. I ignored the request and asked if they could wait a moment while I got some papers, shutting the door quickly before Karen could stick her foot in the way. Lucky for me, I still had a lot of these documents to hand since the purchase was so recent. I could not imagine the trouble I would be in if it was just my word against hers. Not a nice thought for sure. I returned a few minutes later, stopping at the door to listen in to their argument outside before I interrupted it. Karen was practically screaming, "You have to arrest him, you have to muffled complaints followed by, "If you guys work for the public, then I pay your salaries. He's obviously trespassing. Did you see him? He looks..." I stepped outside to cut her rant short as everyone turned to look at me. Karen, red-faced from her shouting, instead decided to finish her sentence. She pointed at me saying, "See, he's a homeless guy, ain't he? Ain't no way this bum lives here." I ignored her remark and addressed the cops, showing them my ID and all the paperwork. The pair moved to the side to look over everything, but from their responses so far, they seemed quite satisfied that no crime had been committed. Karen noticed this too, however, and was not happy about it. Karen walked over to the cops to start another conversation, but was directed away while they continued their investigation. After a few more minutes, they handed back the papers and said their goodbyes as they walked off down the yard. Karen shouted after them, but when she realized her abuse was being ignored, she turned it to me instead. I was feeling pretty smug at this point, having watched her resolve crumble into dust. I tried to keep a cool head throughout the exchange to not antagonize the nutcase, but I let myself reply once before I went back inside. She went silent, mouth open in shock. I thought she was turning to leave, but instead she whipped around and slapped me hard across the face, causing me to fall and hit my head on the floor. The next few moments were a jumbled mess as I faded in and out of consciousness, and when I came to later on, one cop was calling an ambulance while the other was putting handcuffs on Karen. My head burned, my face was sore, but still a victory. Karen ended up behind bars for assault, and since it's never a good idea to attack someone in front of the police. And yeah, ripe stars, I hope this Karen learned her lesson, but then again, I doubt it. Probably after she is out from prison again, she will just continue as usual. Either way, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video, post a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much, and the next one is titled Douchebag Neighbor. At a previous rental house, there was an old gravel/dirt access road that cut between my house and my neighbors, and the two houses behind us that faced the next street over. I think it was a remnant of the old neighborhood and the city never paved it. It was barely wide enough for a car. No one knew whose property it belonged to, no one really used it except for spare parking during the holidays. It was also a safe place for our kids and neighbors' kids to play on bikes and such. At some point, a guy in a Tahoe found it and started using it as a shortcut from my street to the next street over, instead of going all the way down the street to the stop sign, which saved him all of 45 seconds. I never saw him parked anywhere in my neighborhood, he just came through a few times a week. Wouldn't have been a big deal, but he liked to floor it, kick up gravel, and go as fast as possible right between our houses. My neighbor bought a couple of small traffic cones and placed them halfway up the road, so you would have to do a slow wiggle to get around them in a vehicle. A couple of days go by and she comes over with her traffic cones, which had been obliterated, and says she saw the same guy run them over. I go out and buy a couple of more cones, maybe 18 inches tall, and an 80-pound bag of concrete. Flipped them over, stopped up the tops of the cones with duct tape, and filled them to the brim with concrete. Once they dried, I put the two 40-pound cones in the same place as my neighbor had hers and let the neighbors know what was up. Unfortunately, I missed it, but my neighbor didn't. Tahoe boy did his usual gravel spin out and absolutely nailed one of my cones. The orange plastic was burned open and the concrete was in 3 big chunks. She heard the impact and saw him get out, check his vehicle, and drive away. I never saw him again after that, but I like to think that I left a reminder on his vehicle to not Dukes of Hazzard a tiny access road in between houses. And the next one is another revenge story. My ex and I lived on the main street of a small town. We were next to an older couple, early 60s, who lived above their car restoration business. Their building fronted right on the sidewalk and ran the full length and width of their property. There was a garage door in the middle of the front of the building. It was recessed, set back almost the length of a car, so there was a sort of tunnel/carport. That is where they parked the antique car that was their primary transport. The curb to either side of the garage apron was painted yellow. Edit, this was not the first problem we had with them. The wife would give us permission to do something, like double park in front of their driveway to unload groceries or park my mom's car in the vacant lot they owned across the street, but then not tell her husband that she had. He would end up yelling at us about it. Twice already he yelled at me right in front of his wife for something she had said was okay, and she stood there, didn't say a word. I had parked our minivan, as was my preference, in front of our house just outside the no parking zone when we got a big snowfall. It was almost a foot and it was wet and heavy. The husband used a snowblower and cleared their sidewalk and driveway. He blew half of it into a big pile right in front of our van, right up against it. Some even landed on our windshield. There was a car parked a foot behind us, so we had to go through where that pile was if we wanted to drive anywhere. The pile was over 4 feet tall at its peak and most of it was about 3 feet, just low enough to see over when he backed out. I did some rough calculations and determined it was nearly a metric crap ton and a half of snow. I rang their doorbell hoping to start a dialogue about it, but they didn't answer. I did not see all that snow as a problem. I saw it as an opportunity. It was the raw material that dreams are made of. My stepson and I spent hours working on that pile. We were up half the night and I've never seen my stepson put so much effort into anything else before or since. He understood the grandeur of my plan and he shared my commitment to it. Together, we made something magnificent and awe-inspiring. We built a wall. The hard part was that even with the snow from our sidewalk, there was not enough to realize my vision. I needed more. I did the neighbor on the other side of our twin. I added the snow from along the side of our house, carrying each shovelful to the sidewalk for my stepson to add. Then I got smart and started shoveling snow from the backyard onto a tarp so I could drag a big pile around with each trip. It started on the curb by the front of the van and completely enclosed and concealed the no parking sign. It went through and damped the gutter and went out into the street at an angle, ending just over a car width from the curb just before the neighbor's driveway. It was 9.5 feet tall, 11 feet long, it was a foot thick at the curb and widened to more than 3 feet thick. We used a storage bin to make blocks and we sprayed each one with water. We used slush as mortar. That thing was not coming down without heavy equipment. For weeks afterwards, whenever he wanted to leave, his wife had to stand in the street and wave him out when it was clear. The street sloped up slightly towards their property, so a lake formed on their side of the wall and extended to the far end of their property. It was ankle deep where the gutter was, so she had to walk around it. I found out from another neighbor that they called the cops, but I had checked the local ordinances and it was completely legal. It was entirely within the footprint of the pile the husband had made, it was just taller. There were no restrictions on height, all the relevant ordinance dictated was that a pile of the snow could not present a risk of damage to the property, and the wall didn't. It was structurally sound. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story about maternity leave. I own a company and my wife has an executive level position at it. 14 months ago, she gave birth to our son. We elected to have a C-section and she went on maternity leave a month before she was scheduled for it. My wife expected that 3 months would be more than enough. However, after giving birth and having agreed that we would only be having one child together, I already had 3 daughters, my wife was exceptionally adamant about not missing a moment of our son's formative moments because she knew that he would only be a baby for so long. When the time came when she should have gone back to the office, I did not have the hearts to refuse her when she said she needed more time. After giving birth, she joined a mom-specific life coaching program and still sees a life coach regularly. She had also volunteered for underprivileged kids. After a year had flown by, people started asking my wife when she was coming back. Unbeknownst to them, my wife had discussed the fact that she had some light abdominal separation and wanted a tummy tuck, after which she was itching to get back to work. Around that time, another employee at the company, Mary, had gone on maternity leave. Unfortunately, because she has not worked for the company for more than a year, she was not entitled to FMLA and was given 6 weeks off for her birth, 1 week of which she took prior to the birth, and around a month ago, we decided to go for it and the surgery went perfectly. My wife was advised to take at least 2 weeks off from work, but her doctor said to take 4. However, the other day, my wife asked me for around 2 more weeks before she officially went back to work because more rest after surgery could not hurt. I agreed and we announced that she would be resuming her duties February 1st. Mary spent 5 weeks after giving birth at home before returning to the office. Yesterday, after only a few days back at the office, she asked her manager if she could take more time off, begging for at least a week. The manager in question brought this up with me and I told him to deny Mary her request. The reason is because while my wife's duties could be taken up by others, Mary's team was borderline understaffed and her customer service position required her to be there at work. One person leaving is tough on the rest. When I went to personally tell Mary this, she looked very upset. She angrily said that my wife has been gone for a year and that the nurse she sees blames the stress and body pains caused by coming back so early for her struggles in breastfeeding. I apologized but reiterated that it was a busy season for the customer service team and that perhaps we could discuss her getting more time off down the line. When I told my sister about this encounter, she said I was being the a-hole for giving my wife special treatment. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for denying Mary's request after having just allowed my wife an extra 2 weeks? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. And comment number 1 said, you are the a-hole and potentially in violation of labor laws. You cannot give your wife preferential treatment, especially when a cosmetic procedure is part of the equation. You are wrong in so many ways. Edit, I'm not certain he's in violation of labor law with this unequal treatment, that's why I said potentially. Edit number 2, learning a lot about legit medical reasons for a tummy tuck. Comment number 2, if your wife is a paid employee of your company, then you are the a-hole. If Mary has her wits about her, she will report your business practices as unfair and she will win. The next one is titled, Fire Me for Being Pregnant? Bad idea. This last year during the pandemic had been a tough year for my family. My husband went from 6 figures supporting our family on his salary alone while we pocketed my entire salary to losing his job for 8 months. I work in political campaigning, which means I work on short-term contracts as an independent contractor. In other words, if we lose an election, I move on to the next race. I made a pretty good name for myself working on the lower levels of a campaign and moving up quickly. In my state, this year there were statewide elections and I caught a lucky break and ended up the campaign manager on a statewide race. I'm the youngest CM, 24 female, to run a statewide race in about the last 20 years. When the primary came up, we lost the election by 200 votes. While we lost the campaign, coming so close to winning and my age made me a kind of superstar in my field. After we lost, I had offers from all over the state for jobs. The problem is, I had just bought a house and was not looking to relocate, like you often have to do in politics, or the positions were not high enough coming off being the top dog, as the higher positions were already filled. I got an offer to join a local campaign, so no relocation, but the salary was lower than what I was used to. I would however be the CM again. However, I learned quickly my boss had a holier-than-thou personality. She made several comments about how real women breastfeed and have natural births. I would later be able to do neither, and it really screwed with my emotional well-being. I don't have time to list all the red flags, but I was literally just waiting until my husband got a job to exit. The campaign had not been built out at all, there was no one other than the candidate. I ended up building out our entire team, consultant, fundraiser, staff, etc. Luckily, I have made a lot of powerful connections in my time. I signed my contract and sent it in with the salary we had agreed on, with the stipulation that if we raised enough money 3 months down the line, my salary would be raised but could not be lowered at any point. Just a few weeks prior, I had also found out that I was pregnant and my due date was the week of the election, and just a week after joining the campaign, I was also in a serious car accident. Luckily, my pregnancy was safe, but I herniated a disc in the car accident, and due to my pregnancy, there were very few things that could be done as far as helping my back or pain management. If I did my job right, that should not be an issue because my job can essentially be handled from home and staff could do the rest. I had the team working in lockstep and I was proud of the work I was doing, even though only about 10% of my views aligned with the campaign. Then we hit a snag. The candidate's husband got deployed to a rather dangerous place for a month and she completely checked out. She stopped fundraising, which means that everything comes to a halt in campaigning. She stopped putting in the legwork to win. We also lost our only lower staff member during this time. We knew she was worried about her husband, so no one on the team tried to push back very hard. Eventually her husband came back and it was go time. There was not a minute to waste and I was back to getting our operation working full speed. One day she calls me up to tell me how 20 years ago her first job as a private school teacher was making as much money as I was now. I also live in an expensive DC suburb, not the backwoods where she grew up. I have multiple college degrees and this job offers no benefits, unlike teaching. Not comparable at all. This is when I realized there might be a problem. A couple weeks later, I told her I would need to take a step back from doing the other staff members' jobs, mostly door knocking, because of my injured back, but that we would hire someone. Unfortunately, due to the lack of fundraising, it made it hard to pay anyone else and those duties fell on her. CMs don't typically door knock. We had a team meeting with the entire team and I started pressuring the candidate about all the things she was not doing and there was a legitimate meltdown. She started yelling at me about how I was not doing my job and my pregnancy was not her problem and how I was the reason everything was failing, and then hung up on the entire team. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. After this, I decided to take a step back from doing all the duties that are typically handled by lower level staff and just focused on doing my job duties, which were not being appreciated. I pretty much went radio silent and she kept nitpicking at everything. Everyone on the campaign started to grow uneasy, but I told them to just hold out. Well, sure enough, she calls me up and says, "Since you are pregnant and can no longer door knock, you can either work for state minimum wage or you can find a new job." Mind you, she knew my husband had been out of work for 8 months and thought I had no options at this point, but what she didn't know is that my husband had gotten a job offer that exact day. So I stopped her right there and thanked her for the opportunity and told her I would be working my contractually obligated 30-day notice at my current salary and then leaving the campaign. She then began to scream at me about how she was not paying me a dime more and started listing off a list of issues she had with the way I was doing my job. I stopped her, thanked her once again and told her all of my finishing tasks would be completed when I received payment for the last month I worked. And yes, she was a month behind on paying me, as well as payment for the 30-day notice that she was legally required to pay me whether I continued working or not. I waited a few hours and she never finalized my termination in writing, so I sent her a termination letter thanking her for the opportunity and once again repeating everything we had discussed on the phone. She sent me a nasty email again reiterating that I would not be paid for the previous month or 30 days and listed about 10 things that I had done to be terminated, including that I did not wear makeup to work every day. I decided to send this email to the rest of the team and sure enough everyone quit except for the consultant. In 5 minutes she lost everyone she had. Then a friend of mine offered me my dream job working for him, so all in all it worked out in my favor within 5 minutes of being fired. Well, here is where things got tricky though. I realized that my contract that obligates her to pay me for 30 days notice is not signed and I am screwed. Well, sure enough, in her fit of rage she starts emailing everyone talking badly about me. The only problem is I still have access to the campaign email and I am seeing every mail she is sending. Emails saying that she wants to keep me on staff, but that I need to take less money and that I should not have been dishonest about my pregnancy, so clearly I was not doing my job that badly. She just wanted to pay a pregnant woman less. She also asks the consultant for a list of things that I did wrong on the campaign so that she will have cause not to pay me my contract. I noticed that the consultant never replies to this email. He tells her that if she wants to fight it, to send him a copy of the contract and he will have a lawyer take a look at it. Well, sure enough, she sends him a signed copy of the contract and once again my contract is valid and she now has to pay me my severance. She has given me every piece of ammunition I need to get paid at this point, as well as wage a discrimination suit for referencing my pregnancy as a reason for termination. I hire a lawyer. She continues to pester me about turning over all of my work. The thing is, since I'm an independent contractor, I only owe her a final product if I get paid. I reiterate that she is not getting anything until I've been paid and she can take it up with my lawyer. She begins slandering me to everyone I know and continuing to send emails about me that I am just collecting. She then starts calling every friend that she has to bully me into giving her what she wants. My response to all of them is, talk to my lawyer. In one final ditch effort, she has the consultant call me begging me to turn over the stuff. The problem is that the consultant and I are personal friends and he is really unhappy working for her but has contractual obligations. I tell him to tell her the same thing, talk to my lawyer. 5 minutes later, I get a call back from him saying that she has fired him because he refused to throw me under the bus and make up excuses for my termination when he believes I was wrongfully terminated. She fires him too and now he is out of his obligations. He also tells me that the lawyer she sent the contract over to said to pay me. In a matter of 2 weeks, she is once again at square one with no one on her side, she is out of money and struggling. She finally emails me at 11 PM that she is willing to pay me, it is nighttime and I don't work for her anymore, so I decide I don't need to respond at that moment. Well, she starts calling me incessantly and texting me, all of which I am ignoring. By the time I wake up in the morning, I have 20 texts and 5 missed calls. I tell her that I will need to talk to my lawyer at this point and I will get back to her after he responds. Well, she goes nuclear. 20 minutes later I get a call from the police. She is claiming that I've been embezzling campaign funds and stealing her data. I have to get my lawyer on the phone and explain the whole situation and why this is a BS claim. I offer the bank account information for the funds she claimed I stole and proved that they were sitting right there in her account. She just does not know how to access them because I'm usually the one who does that. The police officer thinks she is nuts at this point because, well, she is, but then informs her that it is considered larceny to withhold my pay and asks me if I would like to press charges. I say, if she refused to pay, then yes. Within 2 days I received a check in the mail with my payment and I turned everything over. The funny thing is that my 30-day notice pay was actually more money than if I had finished out the contract with the reduced pay she wanted to pay me. I got an extra $700 and did not have to work for her for the remainder of the time. She ended up losing her election in a swing district by 15 points. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.